Okay. So now we can get straight to it. So for those who don't know, first off, I'm gonna kill Bay. This is International Law Class number 2. It's gonna be the same link every time at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. All right. So, real quick, for those who weren't in class last for the first international law class, we basically covered, and I'm gonna go over this briefly because we're going to be doing a lot of reading. We basically covered that international law is a separate and independent system of law outside of any other government, though it is used as the base.
Peace, y'all. My connection is bad, but I'll be here. Okay.
What you say? What'd you say? Okay. So international law is basically an independent system, right? So that means it's a certain type of system. What kind of system? A system specifically for treaties. So we can't use, everybody else's codes, ordinances, their own specific governments. We got to get to international law, which is the highest pinnacle, right? What does international law require? Well, on this page, and I'm only going to go over this about 5 minutes as far as this brief brush up, if you will, of the first class. On this page, it says, it gives the definition of state, the elements of state. This is an international law document. Okay. Now, this is from the Montevideo Convention, Rights and Duties of a State. It basically says, now we can kind of get on some metaphysics too, a little bit here, but it says the state is a person of international law and should possess the following qualifications or the following elements, right? A permanent population, which is a nation, a defined territory, a government, capacity to enter in relations with other states. So state is not just a state of mind, right? We see the state is just the state of mind, as well as a person in international law that's deemed to be of a government, a defined territory, a permanent population, and a capacity to enter in relations with other states. So this is the 3 branches of government, the state constitution, et cetera, right? We become third parties, just as the Kingdom of Morocco has done. The Kingdom of Morocco has become a third party state and are able to use the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, amongst other treaties. It is up to us to make sure we can do the same. We have to put ourselves in the same position in order to begin to call anybody else out, right? So statehood is the key, right? Nationality is a part of statehood, hence the term nation state. But more precisely, in international law, state, a state government, that type of body politic is what's required. That's the only people they respond to. Now, this flag, we're going to get into more so about what this class is about. Being that we now know a state government is required, we can now focus on what's been going on with these state governments on behalf of Moors. Okay. So this flag right here is the flag, the Franco-Moroccan flag. Okay. This is for the French Protectorate flag. Okay. Meaning that somewhere in international law, which we'll get into tonight, there was established a relationship where France are to protect the Moors, right? Hence the French Protectorate flag. Okay. So this 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 is the first of many screenshots that we'll read through, and we'll discuss point by point, not sentence by sentence like that, but we'll discuss and clear up a lot of misconceptions as we go along the way. Okay. This is a dialogue, if you will, a set of arguments, an exchange of letters that's been compiled together between France and the United States of America. Okay, this is an international law court case, an international court case in the ICJ. Okay, and this is the dialogue. Okay, now we gonna clear up every point that anybody pretty much has. So if you have any questions, just go ahead, cut me off. It's not that many people on the night, so we can just go ahead and free flow with it, if you will. So it says the French Protectorate in Morocco, relinquishment of extraterritorial jurisdiction by certain foreign powers, attitude of the United States. Okay, so we're gonna later get into the relinquishment that a lot of Moors are commonly know about, right? This first paragraph is from the French officials, excuse me. So it says, and mind you, let me give you a little bit more background. Why I got 1913 highlighted is, for one, that's not only when Noble Drew Ali came on the scene, right? But in international law, a year prior to that, the treaty called the Treaty of Fez was created and signed. The Treaty of Fez, which you're going to learn here about more as we read, is what gave the power to France, the certain power of what's called the power of attorney, to govern Moroccan affairs, because we were falling. People were noticing that. So things were set up. Okay. Now, set up for what reason? It's always two sides of the coin. International law and paperwork ain't going to save you, right? We have to establish ourselves as a government, right? It's always two sides of the coin, but we must establish ourselves first. So 1913 was the year after the Treaty of Fez was created, right? Which made France the protectorates, or the power of attorney of Moroccan affairs. Okay. And we about to get more into that. Mr. Secretary of State, by order of my government, I have the honor to communicate herewith to Your Excellency to the text of Franco-Moroccan Protectorate Treaty that was signed at Fez on March 30th, 1912. Okay. The assurances Your Excellency was pleased to give me hereto as to the establishment of the French Protectorate in Morocco lead me to hope that the federal government will see no objection to giving its adhesion to that instrument. The French government would be glad to be assured. So they're expecting no objection, right? Your Excellency will note that under Article 6 of the aforesaid treaty, the diplomatic and consular officers of France will be in charge and in representation and of the representation and protection of Moroccan subjects and interests abroad. So in Article 6 of the Treaty of Fez gives France the power of attorney by saying the diplomatic and consular officers of France will be in charge of the representation and protection of Moroccan subjects. Now, this Moroccan subjects word is a very tricky term. Okay. Now, in history, you might have heard the term British subjects. You might have heard the term French subjects, Spanish subjects, right? This term Moroccan subjects is a very tricky term, being that in our own land are we subject to another government. So it's a triple layer term to say, okay, not only are you supposed to be the national, right? You're supposed to be, this term Moorish or Moroccan subject has a triple entendre to it, because the United States use it one way, and then in international law it's used as one way. Okay? So keep an eye out for this. A limitation, however, was put upon the provision of the Franco-Spanish Treaty of November 27th, last of which I had the honor to communicate to the Department of State on the 29th of the same month. Article 23 of that treaty provides that the Moroccan subjects belonging in the French zone of the Spanish influence placed abroad under the protections and the diplomatic and consular officers of Spain. So there were Moroccan subjects belonging in the French zone or in the Spanish zone under the Spanish influence on the Moroccan land, right? They were Moroccan subjects in the Spanish zone in the Moroccan land. What do we call that? Extraterritorial jurisdiction. When there's an overlay like that, when there's another government having, because of whatever has been agreed upon, however they got there, however it's been created, that overlay is called extraterritorial jurisdiction. Okay, it's extra, right? The land is already governed, right? So that'll just make it jurisdiction or territorial jurisdiction. When it's extraterritorial jurisdiction, that means an overlay by another government or establishment of some sort. Okay. So this also hints at the William Dungy case in Abraham Lincoln, when the Portuguese Moor, when he helped out the Portuguese Moor in the case, that Portuguese Moor, or the Moors, the Moroccan subject in the Spanish influence, the Spanish zone, you see, because Spain had their government going, right? Different stipulations were set up, opposed to Dred Scott, right? Who wasn't under the influence of the French zone, Spanish zone, etc. But due to the fall of our own Moroccan governments, going through its separations and falls and separations, that's all pretty much it was. There was no government to represent him. So as kind of before we go on, if you heard about the Sundry Free Moors, where they petitioned the Sultan, right? At that time, there was a government representing the Moors in so-called America, right? Properly called Morocco, right? But the thing is, as time went by, I would say just the flat line is that Moors, they were traders, right? They were traders who helped the colonists out and get where they are today. So simply because of the world was changing, out of despotism, really. Despotism, greed, and power, and the lack of having to move in it with integrity. See, in today's time, we can see when somebody puts up a treaty and you states away, you miles, thousands of miles away. In that time, you just, depending on that good faith and what they say. When the United States ran off as British subjects, right? They ran off as British subjects. All of a sudden, now they sovereigns because we agreed several times to make them, to see them as governments. We believed that they were governments, right? So, if you will, under many unlawful events were the uprising to them. So they already broke a treaty by running off. That's what we got to get back to. So no matter what state constitution, they United States of America in international law today, and they're seen as a state constitution or a state government this year, so-called. But once the Moors get online, we're our own, and begin to call things out in the international law arena, we can put things in their proper place to say, hold on, whoa. Well, let's not jump the gun. For one, we got to go in a certain order. For one, let's deal with this matter right here. You're on our land. Once we get this straightened out, however long that takes, we're going to see what your proper position is, right? I.e., we're going to tell the world that you're actually still subjects, because now we can take something else to the International Court of Justice, right? So now, and that's a long line of things. Again, I was jumping the gun with that. So now we about to get into a response on behalf of the United States, working as the United States of America. Okay. It says, the Secretary of State to the French ambassador. Okay, so this is the Secretary of State of the United States to the French ambassador. Excellency, I have the honor to acknowledge the receipt of Your Excellency's note of the 8th instance, transmitting the text of the Franco-Moroccan Protectorate Treaty, signed at Fez on March 30th, 1912, and asking the adhesion of the government of the United States thereto, following the traditional American foreign policy, which forbids participation of the United States in the settlement of the political questions which are entirely European in their scope. The government must refrain from any expression of opinion for or against such part or parts of the Franco-Moroccan Protectorate Treaty as may be deemed of a political nature. So what the United States is saying, real quick, is that France must refrain. Okay, they got to pump their brakes. But let's keep reading why they say. Paragraph 1 of Article 1 of this treaty provides that the government of the French Republic and His Majesty, the Sultan, mutually agreed to establish in Morocco such administrative, judicial, educational, economical, financial, and military reforms as the French government may deem it desirable to introduce in Morocco, right? Territorial. In further, paragraph 2, Article 5 provides that the French commissioner resident shall be the sole intermediary of the Sultan in all foreign relations. So basically, the government in the treaty, right, They point out in paragraph 1, article 1, the government, the French government, along with the Sultan, agreed that France will play power of attorney. Okay. They will have administrative, judicial, educational, etc. Right. And deem it desirable to introduce in Moroccan territory. Okay. So they will be the intermediaries in all foreign relations. So when it comes to the United States, that's why they're stepping in and having an input. Now, what reason is that? We're not gonna give them all the good credit. Like, okay, what? Thank you for calling out the United States of America. Yes, but we also got to keep in mind that we had an up and down relationship with France too. Okay, so it's more so a divine process for us to learn government. Okay, as we establish ourselves, as well as climb up the ladder with power, pretty fast, as long as we use counterintelligence, as long as we set up ourselves desirably, as long as we, et cetera, you do, work on the Moroccan law strictly, not United States codes and how we gonna go in they stuff, because at that point, and we can get into that too, because that's also I'm gonna do another video strictly on that, because when it comes to the birth certificate, Social Security, authenticating the birth certificate, to do the Social Security, the name change, trust, establishing trust in their government. You see what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, you gotta say in their government, whatever you're doing in their government, you're still going for the trick bag, because nowhere in their government will ever be the first step for our liberation. So they'll have a lot of small victories that we can entertain when it comes to setting up trust, getting the United States of America passport so you can travel, right? But remember, that's the United States of America. The treaty is between Moors or Moroccan government and the United States of America, that government, two different governments. Okay. The only reason Moors say they're Americans is because that 1828 Webster's Dictionary that says Americans are Native Americans found here, copper-colored people found here by Europeans. And then it says American, the term American was applied to copper-colored people at that. It says applied twice in the definition. It says the term was applied to copper-colored races. So it was applied by who? No, nowhere in law, nowhere in international law was it applied. That was a trick bag. That was an infiltration. So nowhere are we Americans in all reality. Yes, some authors, English authors, you may find that this tribe called this land Amuraco, Tamarik, and all these other names for America. That was a part of the trick bag, because that was true. We did have many names in which we called this all these other names that sound like America, right? But the trick bag was dirty Moors and them giving assistance as to knowing what phrases to use. For one, they knew to use the term state, because they knew that soon after they were going to put the trick bag to this. Right? That's all they ever did. So as something was signed, they just turned around and put a trick bag to something. So they took the term, said, hey, that American term, that Amadako term, that Tamarik term, that whatever term, Statos, Almacanos Statos term, that whatever term, I'm going to take that term and use it for my legal, lawful sense and put it on the record. Since y'all ain't doing it, that's just y'all term. Because I know what to do now. Use it. The Sultan approved it, right? Said, I don't care as long as you paying me my stuff as long as you're following the laws, right? Say, boom, okay, we the United States of America. We're Americans now. Boom. Now here come their dictionaries, right? So yes, you can, at heart, you can and can't say, but we going to take it strictly in the black and white. What does it say? Because it's kind of like saying everybody in the world is Moors. Yeah, that's true. When we talking about black and white, government, strictly, like drawing a line, there's only one Morocco place on earth called Morocco, while all these other places are called whatever they're called. So people on this land will be Moors of whatever tribe, whatever clan, etc., etc. But the thing is that, you know, you can have whatever type of group and practice, etc. That's in the UNDRIP. So you can call yourself Hebrew Israelite or Mayan or whatever. You can call yourself that as long as you're under a more state government. That way you can call yourself that in peace and express yourself in full powers how you want to, basically. Because it all has a certain umbrella. Because we will all have to say, oh, who was governing these tribes? Who was the top dogs of these tribes? I know it just wasn't war all the time, right? If the United States had the east part, what was going on the west part? Where was Montezuma? Where was the Moors in their offices? What was going on, right? If all this was going on at the same time, all these government buildings been up for centuries of years, different ones. Well, that sounds like the same time Montezuma and etc. people was around, right? So we got to take, you know, history in consideration with the international aspect. So it goes on to say that, and we gonna chop this into series. This document. It says, by the terms of Article 1, the government of the French Republic particularly or practically assumes all the powers of the government in Morocco. Okay, all the powers of the government in Morocco. And as a natural corollary thereto, it assumes also the obligations of the Moroccan government in its relations with the foreign government insofar existing treaty rights between Morocco and foreign governments are concerned. Okay, so everything between the treaty rights of the Moroccan government is concerned. With any other foreign nation, France has the obligation by way of treaty. What treaty? The Treaty of Fez in 1912. To be the power of attorney. Why? Because we were falling. Okay. Now let's give a little bit another piece of information. We also know that France has control over Haiti or Haiti, right? Whatever you want to call it. Look at what's going on over there. So when it comes to how things may have could have been, when it comes to how it could have been, you know, if the United States wasn't here and we actually fell victim for whatever reason, they'd be power attorneys, we would probably be looking like something like them to some degree, right? So let's not give France, you know, too much leeway in this compared to the history. Okay, but we do got to thank them for calling out the United States of America for us to review on this level. Somebody had to do it, right? So for whatever reason, we don't care, but it's here. So, well, actually, we do care, but you know, it says, as your excellency is aware, adhesion on the part of the government of the United States to any treaty under our Constitution can only be given by and with the advice and consent of the United States Senate, and after careful consideration of the Franco-Moroccan Protectorate Treaty, and this government is of the opinion that is not sufficiently detailed and concrete in the provisions to permit of the submission to this country's treaty making power. So where it says the consent of the United States Senate, the United States is saying that based on, and remember this is the United States response, based on let's kind of backtrack and what else I got highlighted right quick. It's saying yes, the government of France and the Sultan have agreed, but based on the treaty, the United States is saying France needs to have consent from the United States. Okay, now let's pause right quick. The United States is a corporation, correct? So hence the term United States, no America. But as we see here, this is another case between France and the United States of America. We say France, the United States of America in Morocco, 1952. Right. Now, in 1952, we're going to get back to the other document here in a second. But real quick, about this case. 1952, in which we'll talk about this case specifically in further videos, because we're talking about this other document that leads up to this. But this case of United States of America in Morocco, right? So these Americans of some sort, whatever type of American, I don't care. Moorish American, American Indian, American Hebrew, American Paleo American, or whatever. Ancient American. It's a trick bag because they're in Morocco. Okay. So that should be the placeholder word. That should be the concrete word. So remember that France governed the Morocco and over in Africa, right? Which is now the Kingdom of Morocco, right? That's what this is about. When did they get their separation? 1956. Well, this case was 1952. So now we're starting to lead into the truth of France in Morocco, their power of attorney in Morocco, right? They had power of attorney over Morocco, this land, and that land over there. But what happened in that case, we'll get more to like how the Kingdom of Morocco became the Kingdom of Morocco and how they branched off as their own government, their own third state party. And they cool now. They can use the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. They respect it. Everybody doing business with them. They said you can use the term Moor over there freely and all that. You can be this tribe over there freely and all that. You see? But over here, it's like, hold on. They calling people African Americans. They calling people Negro. They calling people colored. They calling people Indian. They calling people that. Whatever term. It's only one term. Moor or Moroccan. Simply because this land is Morocco. Again, you can have your own tribe and still identify yourself as that, because you don't have to say you're Moor or something, or include that. But in your paperwork, as far as your alignment and your documents and law, yeah, it got to be strictly that, because we talking about the people that govern this land. Simple wordplay, not Moorish American. That's not in the terminology. That's not in the treaty. Moors or Moroccans. We're talking about direct and it is what it is type of thing. So, and that's a whole nother topic in itself, because people would think, oh, so you saying Noble Drive leave lying? No. It's a whole nother story in itself. So let's get back to it. So they're basically saying France needs the consent of the United States of America. Okay, so provided, however, the government of the French Republic is willing to give its assurance that the American interests and rights in Morocco, as are at present safeguarded by existing treaties, shall continue to receive the same consideration in the future as they have been entitled to and have enjoyed in the past, on such understanding, the government of the United States will be inclined to view with favor the reforms with the French government protectorate contemplate introducing into Morocco as provided for in the treaty in question. So basically they're saying, okay, just chill out. Okay? Everything will go as it's been going according to the treaties. Everything's been going fine since then, right? They're still alive and everything, right? What are you tripping about? Okay? Again, this is their first response back to the French government. Okay. Let's try to get this up. Okay. Now, the French government responds by saying, okay, it says, the French charge their affairs to the Secretary of State. Mr. Secretary of State, by order of my government, I have the honor to forward herewith to your excellency 2 copies of the official bulletin of the Morocco Protectorate promulgating, I can't say that word, the new judiciary system in the French zone of the Sharifian Empire. Okay, so they're in international law. Not only did they already say United States and Morocco is here, so this land is called Morocco, but this land is the Sharifian Empire. Okay, a lot of people think a lot of times in terms of that over there in Africa, most times, but that's the cover up. That's the cover up. Okay, yes, they are a part of the Moroccan Empire as of today. Okay, but we have to differentiate. We have to decipher when we say Moors. Like everybody's a Moor. That melanated man over there in France is a Moor. That melanated woman over there in Spain is a Moor. That melanated man over there in Britain is a Moor. But these are British subjects, okay? These are the same. So we got to decipher the stuff. These are the same melanated people that came and colonized. So we can't just be calling everybody Moors just because they got the same skin. Okay? Yes, in truth, yeah, they Moors. In fact, they're not. Okay? So we have to differentiate that. Okay? So that this Moor word has been used as a trick bag to influence that perspective as well. Okay. So the Sharifian Empire, together with a copy of the Journal Official of the French Republic of September 9th, 1930, which also contains the decree relating to that organization, the new judiciary system instituted by virtue of the provisions in paragraph 2 in Article 9 of the Franco-German Treaty of November 4th, 1911, as intended to supersede the French consular courts on and after October 5th, 1913. So the new judiciary system is supposed to be that of France's judiciary system, right? This is France responding back. This is their second time responding back to the United States of America, so-called United States, right? Or hence the other way around. So this new judiciary system was to be established because France is working as power of attorneys, So they're acting like us as we were to protect us, right? Now it says in accordance. Now also keep in mind that certain provisions, certain laws were set up just in case we fail, right? Because when another government comes on another government's land, and for whatever reason sign that treaty, i.e., the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, and say, "Hey, you can have this." They kept in mind that there's also a possibility that that government can overthrow so-called our government. So certain things were set up, but there were a lot of things that a lot of windows open for the United States to use. Okay, because it got worse than expected, if you will. Okay, thanks to the dirty Moors. Again. So it says, in accordance with the provisions of the aforesaid article, I have been instructed to ask the federal government to place its citizen under the new jurisdiction. I have hastened to forward to my government to reply to your excellency will be so good as to return to me on the subject. So again, they stated 3 times in this reply: a new judiciary system, a new jurisdiction, right? So they saying respond, holla back at me. United States of America responds by, and you got to use the terms interchangeably, the acting Secretary of State to the French ambassador. Excellency, the department has the honor to make reply to the embassy's notes on August 29th, September 14th, October 7th, and January 7th, last relative to the establishment of the French Protectorate in Morocco and the revision of the lists of American protégés in the country. So this list of American protégés, let's get this clear right quick. The United States of America is saying that they're aware of this list of American protégés. They basically they realize France pressuring them. They say, okay. They want us to give up this jurisdiction, right? They're talking about this list and all this stuff that they was talking about in the Treaty of Madrid. That's the list they're talking about. It was actually named numerous times on numerous occasions. But one time in the Treaty of Madrid, where basically the United States of America was to provide a list of it's called what they call an employee list in the Treaty of Madrid. It's gonna be, and we're gonna get more specific here in a second. This employee list was what it says here: a list of American protégés, i.e., what they call American citizens, or United States citizens. So they said, yeah, we need this list in that country, right? Now, by this time, you really think they got a list? No, they don't have a list. They still don't have a list now. I know people that's not in the system now, not even born, they don't even know about them. They don't have a list. They have a list of so many people, right? But so, and I know a big group of people like that that's nowhere on the radar. But so it's crazy. But anyway, so, and it's only until so long because you can't, not be in the system forever, you know. So these are young people. But so this list, right? It says in the first note above mentioned that the department is informed in relation to the establishment of the French Protectorate that owing in the inadequacy of the means thereto employed to prevent that the smuggling of arms and munitions of war into Morocco, generally Layouti had decided to declare martial law within the zone of the French influence in Morocco in the matters control of contraband of arms. So the French government was to control the contraband of arms. In the influence note of September 14th, Mr. Peretti, who was then acting as charge d'affaires ad interim, so he was in charge of the affairs for the French government, he made known that the wish of his government, that this government, the French government, would give instructions to his representatives at Tangier, looking to the designation of delegate to assist the revision of the protection list of people lying under the American jurisdiction. So this French government took upon Tangier to come upon this list that the United States of America was supposed to have of these protectorates or these proteges. Not protectors, these proteges. So this term proteges is being used to identify these melanated people in international law. They're calling them proteges. They're not calling them nationals. They're not calling them citizens. They're calling them proteges. Who calls them citizens? The United States of America calls them citizens, right? On their own behalf, when they like to social engineer, they say, yeah, you're a citizen, you're an American citizen, right? You're an American citizen. But in international law, they're going to clearly decipher it. Whoa. There's a difference between American citizens and proteges, right? And other subjects. They wouldn't name all these as we read if it wasn't. Okay. So American proteges, what is a protege? Somebody being protected by a government. Therefore, you must follow the laws of that government. Okay. So doing business as a government or doing business as an organization, trying to find your liberation inside their government is only going to bring you small victories and so much freedom. It's a limit to that. You'll never be able to proclaim the land by trying to use a tactic of somebody else's government in their government. It will only give you 50% freedom, happiness. It might trick a lot of people, in which it has. Okay. But that was a learning lesson. We learned how to do trust, wills, etc., which is good. We learned some law. We learned how to do business. But now it's time to learn how to create a government. Right? It's time to, everything we learn, put it under a more state government. Why state government? Because that's the only type of government, the one and only type of government that's acknowledged amongst the world. So it says, what was that? It says, Mr. Peretti added that it was not possible to accept the reserve of the United States relative to the rights of foreign representatives to act in the last resort upon the decision of the Moxen. And the Moxen is like officials of the Moroccan government. Okay. So it's not their responsibility to act in place of this, is what they're saying. Okay. Or it's not, they saying it's not their place by way of the treaty, basically. See, we gonna see how the United States, because this is the United States response, we gonna see how the United States is using the treaty on their behalf, because both parties are using the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. So it's gonna be a lot of, hey, you can't do this here, I can do this, and you can do this here, but I can do this. Okay. So it says, again, Mr. Peretti added that it was not possible to accept the reserve of the United States relative to the right of the foreign representatives to act and resort upon the decision of the Moxen in regards to the natives who should enjoy protection of the foreign government. Okay. So we should, the Moors who don't have a government should enjoy the protections of a foreign government. Okay. The protectorate, they're called proteges, they're called more Moroccan subjects. Well, why are we called nationals? Why are we called Moroccan citizens? Because to be a citizen, you got to be a government, got to be established, right? So, it says, excuse me. It says, with his note of October 7th, Mr. Peretti transmitted to the department copies of the official bulletin, the official bulletin of the Morocco Protectorate, promulgating the new jurisdiction system in the French zone of the Sharifian Empire. Okay, so they talk about Morocco and the Sharifian Empire. They're using words interchangeably so people can get the hint. Okay, Mr. Peretti called attention to the fact that the new judiciary system was intended to supersede the French consular courts on and after October 15th, 1913, and under instructions asked this government to place its citizens under new jurisdiction. Okay, so they're asking them to place them under this new jurisdiction. Okay, and well, they're realizing that they asked them to place them under new jurisdiction. Okay, so watch for the trick bags. Finally, with your note of the 7th of January last, you transmitted to the department a list of errata to the bulletin official and requested that the new French courts in Morocco be recognized at the earliest possible date. Turning first to the subject to the revision of this protege list mentioned in Mr. Peretti's note of September 14th, it is proper to state that the protection of native Moors in Morocco, okay, so the protection of native Moors in Morocco, okay, everybody's a Moor. Why? This is Morocco. Okay. Now, that don't mean you got to go out and be like all Moors and, do like that. Because, again, you've seen pictures of so-called American Indians with their own type of fezzes that look nothing like how the fezzes have today. Nonetheless, it's a national headdress. Nonetheless, most American Indians and so-called were Muslims or Muslims for that reason, because they knew, under one umbrella, there was many similar mindsets. It just, for many different reasons, there was separation still. So yeah, there's a lot of Moors saying they're Muslim or Muslim, but there's still many sects within the Moorish government still. You see. So it says, by the native Moors in Morocco, by this government rest upon the Treaty with Morocco of 1836 and the Madrid Convention of 1880. The relevant part of the Treaty of 1836 is found in the Article 15, which reads as follows. Okay, this is Article 15 of the Treaty of Madrid. Merchants of both countries shall employ only such interpreters and such other persons to assist them in their business, and they shall think proper. The Convention of 1880 declares in Article 1 that the protection of native Moors is based on the British and Spanish treaties with Morocco and on the Convention of 1863 between France, Morocco, and other powers. Those other powers are Spain and Britain. Okay, so I'm gonna finish this paragraph right quick. With modifications introduced by the present convention and stipulates in Article 16, the authorities in Morocco will recognize no protection of any kind, whatever such as if as expressively provided for in the convention. And excuse me if I can't read this shit. But what's going on here is that in the convention, right, the Treaty of 1880, the Treaty of Madrid, between Britain, Spain, Morocco, France, right? It says within that treaty lies the protection, lies the true another truer distinction between the position of United States of America and us Moors, or the Moroccan subjects, that of a Moroccan government. But now the term Moroccan subjects has been used to identify with the straw man. That's what the Moroccan subject is. So instead of just being a normal person or a normal individual, right? Can't even say the word person no more. Individual. Human being. Can't even be human no more, right? Human being. To say a Moorish subject or Moroccan subject used to be to say, yeah, I'm that of a Moroccan government. But now, since the United States has made itself a corporation, right, it hit the world with the trifecta like that. So they went from British subjects to the United States of America to the United States Corporation, that triple entendre. Now they put us in that same predicament, saying, hey, this term Moroccan subject, we're not going to tell them that's the term we call them in international law. We're going to say African American. We're going to say Mexican. We're going to say Negro, color, et cetera, et cetera. You know, we're going to use those other terms, right? The term Moorish subject you'll never see on documents just out and about, because that will give it away that you are a Moor, right? Like a French subject, right? Who is that of a French government, right? It will give too much away. So hence the term Moorish American, though a misnomer, because a government was not established at the time to be able to use such strict words, because you would have to incorporate yourself, right, in somebody else's government to express a certain type of way. You have to utilize religion to shroud everything, such as what Noble Drew did. You can't use the treaties because you have to be a government, a state government. So there were certain things. The half has not been told, basically. What is that other half? International law. Okay. So that's why it's like the world is so much to learn again. Excuse me. So it says, after a careful examination of the several articles of the Madrid Convention relative to the protection of American proteges, okay, did it say citizens? Did it say subjects? It said proteges. Okay. It's an examination of the several articles of the Madrid Convention relative to the American proteges. So it's saying that there's somebody in this Madrid Convention, this treaty, that America has. We're going to call them American proteges. We're going to be that specific. We're going to combine all of that, saying that there was somebody once a part of France, Spain, Great Britain, or Morocco that is now in because that's who was in the Treaty of Madrid was about between. That is now in United States of America hands. We're going to call them proteges because they're being protected, right? So it says the department is unable to reach the conclusion that the Moorish government enjoys the right ultimately to decide upon the persons who may become proteges of this government. Okay, so United States of America is not entitled to ultimately the Moorish governments. Why is that? Even because in our treaties, multiple treaties, does it say the more, if you want to be a United States citizen or if you want to be a part of anybody else's government, you got to come to the Moroccan government first and establish that. So when they say, well, you're a United States citizen, well, they are already breaking one or two articles here and there in this treaty, that treaty. To say, whoa. First off, we already established this fact that in order to become a part of anybody else's government, you got to come to our government first. Why didn't that happen? Well, ours failed. Ours became dormant. Right? So that's point number one as of why we aren't United States citizens. Okay? In international law. It also says decide upon the persons who may become proteges. Okay. So, on the contrary, Article 2 of the Convention provides that the foreign representatives at the head of the legation may select their interpreters and employees from amongst the subjects of Morocco or others, and Article 3 provides that the consular officers shall be allowed to select their employees. By Article 5 of the same convention, the government of Morocco recognizes that the right of ministers charge d'affaires and other representatives, which is granted to them by treaties to select the persons whom they employ. In regard to the list of protected persons, okay, protected people are the proteges, right? Or more specifically, protected persons are the proteges, because the people is represented as a lawful term, de jure lawful term in as seen as a part of a government, et cetera, et cetera. When you say persons, now you're diminishing. You can use it in the more diminishing aspect by saying you're a corporation, because a person relates to a corporation in law, unlike a people who has a de jure aspect. Okay. When you use the word persons, you can play with it more freely. The convention is equally precise as appears by Articles 7 and 8, which reads as follows. Foreign representatives shall inform the Sultan's Minister of Foreign Affairs in writing of any selections of any employee made by them. They shall furnish annually of the said minister a list of the names of persons protected by them or by their agents throughout the states or the Sultan of Morocco. The list shall be transmitted to the local authorities, who shall consider as persons enjoying protection only to those names are contained therein. So the United States of America is supposed to give a list of everybody who's a part of their system today, right? So they can continue the matters, so they can check to make sure everything's all right, since the United States of America just want to say, hey, in the first response, everything's going to be all right. Okay. They still putting a little bit of pressure on this. Okay. Give me that list, though. You right. Everything going. Give me that list, though. Give me that list. Let me continue the instructions that's laid out. Can we do that? It says in Article 8, consular officers shall transmit each year to the authorities of the district in which they reside a list bearing their seal of the persons protected by them. These authorities shall transmit in the Minister of Foreign Affairs to the end of that. If be not comfortable to the regulations, the representatives at Tangier may be informed of the fact. A consular officer shall be required to give immediate information of any changes that may have taken place among persons protected by the consulate. So any changes on that list after they've given it, they're supposed to keep informing them. They haven't even done step one, right? Let them know, let alone tell them the changes, okay, that's been made. Now, hold on, let me make sure. Okay, I'm gonna allow more people to speak here. And peace to everybody who's in here. So, and we, depending on how far we get, we're gonna wrap it up probably here in another, not wrap it up, but at least stop reading from this and start again in law class 3. So let's see how I get this on my screen. Yeah, on my screen. Okay, here we go. Regarding the appointment of protégés for signal service, the convention provides, Article 16, that the Minister of Foreign Affairs at Tangier shall be previously informed of the nature of the services and notified of the intention towards them, in order that he may, if need be, present his observations thereon. Yet the final decision shall be reserved for the government to which the service shall have been rendered, concerning the protection of the native employees of private persons. The native employees of private persons. Who's operating as a private person? The United States, right? What's there? It's a subpar on subpar on subpar into a pocket. Okay. So native employees of private persons. The Treaty of 1836 appears to contain no stipulation, but in Article 9 and 10 of the Convention of 1880, there are found the following provisions. Okay, so they're saying, before we continue, the native employees of private persons, there's nothing found in 1836 in that treaty, no stipulations, but in Article 9 and 10 of the 1880 Treaty of Madrid reads as follows. Article 9 says servants, so they're tampering words here. They're saying protégés, they're saying servants, they're saying employees, right? They're using Sharifian Empire and comparing it to Morocco. So they're using all these terminologies to show you the synonymous similarity between them all and the differences between them all. Okay. This is why they say American citizen and protégés and subjects, etc. It's a reason to call out those differences. So Article 9, okay, in the Treaty of Madrid. This is from our own Moroccan laws. Our own Moroccan laws. Servants, farmers, and other native employees of native secretaries, and interpreters shall not enjoy protection. So servants shall not enjoy protection. The same shall be the case with Moorish employees or servants of foreign subjects. Okay, so if you want to be employee or servant, right, of a foreign subject, go ahead. But you got to consent to the Moroccan government first. So yeah, if it's Moors just saying, hey, I want to be a United States citizen, I got a good job as a judge, and yeah, do. Okay, when the governments get online, if they want to do that, they can do that. But they got to follow step one first. They got to follow what's already in their treaties first before we get to land out any other treaty. We get to, if we just follow the steps of our own treaties, we see what it takes. In my first video, I showed that in Article 121 of the Act of Algeciras, it tells you that each state needs a constitution, and that constitution needs to be deposited at Madrid. That's where the seat of international law it was held at the time. So same applies today. Every state needs a state constitution, and it needs to deposit it where the seats of the international law arena are, i.e. the United Nations. Put them on notice, not the United States. That's a corporation. The United States can't do nothing. They acting as a government. Who they about to acknowledge desertly? You see? Now, yes, governments in the United Nations are doing their dirt. But again, in order to call out anybody else, we got to worry about ourselves first. We got to put ourselves in the proper pedestal. Not doing business as organizations no longer. That was a learning process. I'm not saying there was something bad about that, but it was a step for a certain phase, and that phase has come and gone. Okay. Now international law has developed into a way that we can now utilize the ancient Moroccan laws and the modern day international establishments that has agreed to enforce our Moroccan laws, as long as we agree to follow what everybody else has done to become recognized as a government. What kind of government? Not a theocratic government. That's the type of government that's supposed to be under a Moorish state government. They're supposed to work hand in hand. The Moorish Science Temple of America, along with any other government who is trying to be in this, or any other organization who's trying to be in this, religious organization, their job is to reach out to the local governments or the local communities, right? Teach people, right? Look out for the local aspects of things, the utility, etc. The state government works on behalf of the international, on the national scale. Okay. So that's where the problem comes in. We need our own governments and not just our own organizations in somebody else's government. We actually never need organizations in somebody else's government, but we're settling for our own organizations, which in entirety aren't our own organizations, because you can proclaim your nationality all you want to, but if it's only two statuses, if you're stateless or you have a state, either you're part of this government or you're part of that government. Regardless, to some degree, no matter what you do, there's a limit. As long as you're under somebody else's government, there's a limit. Period. So there'll never be somebody, an individual, more able to enforce a treaty on behalf of them personally, because the international law don't work like that. They don't just come up, oh yeah, you individual more, yeah, you can do that. Yeah. No. International law says if you want to enforce a treaty, we the ones enforce treaties here. We want to make sure they get across. If you want to do that, you got to set yourself up in a certain way. It can't just be no individual Moorish process. It can't just be somebody's idea. Just follow international law. What that means? Just follow your Moroccan treaties. Right? If we read your treaties, all the instructions right there, all the steps we need to do in the future, etc., etc. But this France versus United States of America case is going to give us the proper eye as to what laws do we need to enforce first as a government coming up. That's what this case is going to clarify as we go through it throughout its slides and classes, because we can't just be throwing stuff out there. I ain't just going to this case just because there's Moors in it. It's a certain chronological order that you gotta approach it with. So it says, nevertheless, the local authorities. So we got to figure it out right quick. That the servants, they saying you can be a part of that, but again, according to other aspects in the treaties, you also got to come to the Moroccan government and notify us that you want to leave. You can't just up and leave. So, nevertheless, the local authorities shall not arrest an employee or servant of a native officer in the service of a legation or consulate, or of a foreign subject or protected person, without having notified authority upon which he is dependent. If a subject of Morocco in the service of a foreign subject shall kill or wound any person, or violate his domicile, he shall be arrested immediately. But the diplomatic or consular authority under which he shall be notified without delay. Okay. Article 10. Now, and I'm gonna kind of just skip down. You guys can screenshot this stuff, because what it talks about here, up until we get to the point that's highlighted. Well, let's just read it. Okay. Nothing is changed with regard to the situation of brokers, as established by the treaties and by which the Convention of 1863, except with what is stipulated relative to taxes in the following articles. So this is about taxes, right? Now, real quick, I'm glad I read this, but real quick, taxes is the best and primary way for government to come up, for government to grow and develop. So now we're talking about, oh, hold on. Once we get our state governments online, what's one of the first things we need to focus on? Not only do we need to focus on this French versus United States of America case, because France is a power attorney over us now. Our goal is to have complete sovereignty and independence. So we need to get our alignments in a row. We need to get our ducks in a row, right? Before we, exercise, in further degrees. We also need to get taxes going. Why? Because that's the best way for the government to develop. So then we go to Moroccan laws. See, hey, United States, y'all supposed to be taxed. But we can't tax you unless we have a government. So we're going to establish these governments. Okay? We're going to come together, come to the ICJ, say, hold on, whoa. United States, y'all supposed to be taxed according to ABCD, which we'll get into. Right? So this we talking about rent here, okay? Excuse me. Now again, that was their downfall in the first place. That was the whole reason why they struggled for many years and couldn't bloom as the United States of America. Right? Taxes. They had to pay the day of Algiers, et cetera, et cetera. Right? So it says, inasmuch as the Madrid Convention refers in Article 1 to the Convention of 1863 between France, Morocco, and other powers regarding that the protection of native Moors, and to the British and Spanish treaties with Morocco on the same subject, so it's talking about the same subject, it is appropriate to examine the provisions of these treaties on the subject. So examine them because it's talking about the same subject. The provisions of the Convention of 1863 appear to be substantially the same as the regulations relative to the protection adopted by the common consent of the legation of France and the government of Morocco, August 19, 1863, reprinted in the Treaties in Force 1904 at the end of the Madrid Convention. The regulations are in part as follows. Okay. Protected persons are divided into two classes. The first class comprises native employed by the legation and by the various French consular officers. The second class consists of native factors, brokers, and agents employed by French merchants for their business affairs. French protection is not extended to natives employed by French citizens in agricultural occupations. It is moreover understood that the agricultural laborers, herdsmen, or other native peasants in the service of French citizens shall not be legally prosecuted without immediate information thereof being communicated with the competent consular officer in order that the latter may protect the interests of the countrymen. So you need a competent consular officer, right, to continue to be in order that the latter may protect the interests of the countrymen. This list, the list of all protected persons, shall be delivered by the proper consulate, not just somebody coming out just saying in the consulate, to the competent magistrate of the place, who shall likewise be informed of any changes that may subsequently be made in the list. So they are to exchange, right? The competent magistrate. Why? Why is that a competent magistrate? We're talking about extraterritorial jurisdiction because of the treaty. So that jurisdiction that the United States of America was limited to, right, because of the treaty that they were limited to, not Moors, but Moroccan subjects, proteges, right? So now we got to just strictly decipher nationals. How do you become a national? You start your own government. Okay. Not yours personally. Like you can be you. No, you can't take oaths personally to all three branches of government, et cetera, et cetera. You can't do a video at inauguration and you asking the other person, do you swear da 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 da, and you hop on the other end and swear into it, et cetera, et cetera. This is not an individual process thing. That individual process thing is that way that can be seen as selling you into slavery. What do I mean by that? That authentication, a birth certificate, Social Security, et cetera, which is you could say it's selling yourself into slavery, but if you know what you're doing, you're really not. But at the end of the day, it's still a trick bag, because no matter what you're doing with it, because it's not creating your own government. You still gonna be under United States laws, doing all of that to some degree. You proclaim your nationality, but nationality don't mean statehood. You can say nationality all day. They are not familiar with that word or the power of that word as they are the term state, because that is the word required. Hence the term nation state. Okay, so it's statehood, which is really should be the order of the day, opposed to nationality used to be based on the ways of life in law. Okay. So we go to say, each protected person shall be furnished, and we gonna let me see. We probably gonna wrap this here up, not on this one, but the next one, and we can talk about question and answer and comments and stuff like that, and continue this the next time. So it says the British and Spanish treaties mention. Or wait, I'm skipping something. Each protected person shall be furnished with a card in French and in Arabic, mentioning his name, in stating the services which secure the privilege of him. All these cards shall be issued by the legation of the French at Tangier. So he's talking about passports, basically. Okay. The British and Spanish treaties mentioned in Article 1 of Madrid Convention are presumably the General Treaty of December 9th, 1856 between Great Britain and Morocco, and the Treaty of Commerce and Navigation of November 20th, 1861 between Spain and Morocco. In the British Treaty, it is specifically provided that the charge d'affaires and the consular officers of Great Britain shall be at liberty to choose their own employees, and the British subjects, okay, see how I said the British subjects, shall be free in quotation, to commit their affairs. So now we're going to go into, it's getting closer to the relinquishment, the United States relinquishment, okay? Because now we're getting British subjects. Well, who are the British subjects? We're talking about United States of America, right? Quote unquote, shall be free. Okay. So they basically saying you better go back home. But who can enforce that? Well, the treaty between Moors and Americans. If France has power of attorney over Americas, they cleaning up house the best they can, but who can enforce that? Because the treaty between who? Moors and Americans. A Moroccan government and American government. American government composed of many states, just as we need to do to come online to be considered one state or one international state, working operating as one, right? So it goes to say to commit their affairs to the management of the persons whom may appoint as their broker, factor, or agent, nor say the treaty, shall such British subjects be restrained in their choice of persons to act in the capacities. The Spanish treaty provides that the charge d'affaires or consul general may choose his interpreters and servants from amongst the Muslim subjects, right? The Moroccan subjects, the Muslim subjects, or among those of any other country. Okay. So they can choose that of the Muslim, the Moor subjects, the Moroccan subjects, or of any other country, as long as the rules are in line. That other consular officers, let me see what I meant, may name employees, either Muslims or subject of another country, that the Spanish merchants may put their affairs into the hands of brokers or agents appointed by themselves, and they shall not be interfered with, nor shall obstacles be raised to their free choice of their persons to fulfill the charge. It would therefore seem that the choice of the protégés of the United States in Morocco, so the protégés of the United States in Morocco. Now hold on, whoa. It's no longer United States of America in Morocco. They say protégés of the United States in Morocco. So they acknowledging both United States of America in Morocco, the people y'all pretending to be, and the United States in Morocco. Either way, we saying that y'all have protégés, i.e. Moroccan subjects or Moorish subjects under y'all wing. Okay, these are not typos. This is purposely done to acknowledge all points, cross all T's and dot all I's. You can never have another window open ever. You got to think childish with them in a degree. So it says proteges of the United States of America rest by right of treaty, ultimately with this government. Okay, so what government? It's talking about the French government. Why? Because they're the power of attorney, at least until we come online and align how we need to align when it comes to complete sovereignty and independence. So such appears to the view of which the department has always taken of the Convention of 1880, which has been on the basis of its action in carrying out the provisions of the convention. The question of the choice of protege is, however, in the view of the government, but a phase of a larger question involved in the establishment of the French and Spanish control over separate portions of Morocco. We're about to get real in a second after this paragraph. On the subject of the French Protectorate, this government has heretofore expressed itself as being in favor of the reforms in France contemplated introducing into Morocco in accordance with the stipulations of the Franco-Moroccan Treaty of March 30th, 1912, on the understanding that the provision be made for the preservation of American interests and rights in Morocco, commercial or otherwise, which are at present safeguarded by existing treaties with that country. The more important of those interests and rights it is proper now to enumerate. This is where it's about to get real. In the first place, attention may be drawn to the right of aliens to hold land in the Sharifian Empire. So, whoa. First off, attention should be drawn to the rights of aliens, the United States of America, the United States more specifically, right? Doing business as the United States of America, holding land in the Sharifian Empire, i.e., Morocco, or what some people think is America. These are international law documents. Remember that. Law, usable, proof, not some English author's random book. This right appears now to be based upon the provisions of the Madrid Convention and the Act of Algiers. Hold on. So this right, their so-called right, remember they had to put the quotations earlier. Their so-called right of land in Morocco, the Sharifian Empire, is based upon the provisions of the Madrid Convention and the Act of Algiers, these two different Moroccan treaties. Okay? So that means we got to study those with a view to carry out Article 60 of Act of Algiers, of the Algiers Act. The Sultan's foreign minister of December 5th, 1912, sent to the diplomatic corps at Tangier a set of regulations classifying a public domain of the empire and defining inalienable property. Okay, so in Article 60 of the Act Algiers is where you can read more on inalienable and alienable property. These regulations also laid down certain rules to govern the sale of the later class of property to the foreigners. It is understood that these regulations are not entirely consistent with the provisions on the subject of land ownership in the Act of Algiers and the Convention of Madrid. So this is saying it's not totally clear, right? There were some holes open, right? That tends to happen a lot of times in law, even when you some people making their constitutions in history. A lot of things have been left open, and a lot of unfortunate events. So they had to come and mend some things, and et cetera, right? This is how the United States got to where they are. Where were we? It goes to say, under Article 11 of the Madrid Convention, the right of all foreigners to hold property anywhere within the empire is recognized, but the purchase of property must take place with the previous consent of the government. So if you want to have your land, you got to talk to the Moroccan government. They just calling out the state facts, the basic facts. By Article 60 of the Act of Algeciras, the Algeciras Act, this right was confirmed, and it was further provided that within a radius of 10 kilometers around the open ports and within 2 kilometers around certain other towns, land might be acquired by foreigners. So that's where land might be acquired by foreigners, those exact parameters, without the previous consent of a Moorish government. Okay. The proposed regulations define inalienable property to include Guish lands, the seashores, habis or mosque properties, tribal lands, forest land, desert, uncultivated or ownerless lands, ore-bearing lands, and escheated property. The department is advised that practically all the land within the 10-kilometer zones, especially at Tangier, is either Gush land or seashore. So that's where they're able to acquire land without previous consent of the Moorish government. But that's putting them on the outskirts. Like, you can chill right there, but if you do anything else, of course, it's on, right? Let me see how much I got left. Okay, we gonna stop this here. Okay. And continue off next time with to continue this, unless y'all trying to continue this. Let me see. Unless y'all trying to continue this, we can. I'm all for it, but if y'all have any questions or comments or trying to get any clarity, we can definitely hone in on that too and make this a part two, or any questions or any other type of we can get off topic too, but if y'all like.
Hey Islam, how you doing?
Hey, peace, Mo.
All right, yeah. Only have really a question concerning transitioning from this corporation into eventual government. That's concerning retirement, so-called benefits, my military benefits, and my federal service benefits, like in my bank accounts, things like that. Transitioning over, being able to function and live and help my family out after doing so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you
so maybe the next call, or I guess next week, you can go over some of those things to help ease that the stress of thinking wanting to do it, but then
yeah.
being hesitant.
Yeah. See, and it's everything is, remember, this is the time for us to learn international law. So in this time, this is not a time of war, even though it seems like that. So as we go throughout these processes, these are not processes of friction. These are not processes of chaos or that anybody has to fight. They're currently, and before I get more in your question, to kind of build up into that, currently there's 3 more state governments online right now. these three Moorish state governments, I talked to two, the officials, a couple of officials of two of them, and that's ANPAC and ANPAG. That's where I got a lot of this information from. That's who taught me a lot of this and pointed out this perspective to me, okay, in these international arenas. Once they came online, they got their government officials, they got their people that sworn in, etc. Once they came online, everything that they do, everything that they're no longer considered what we went over, more subjects or proteges in any sense. So what happened? They shared many stories with me, and you can even speak to them with yourself, and ask them any type of question. They won't, because these are very egoless people. But or try to be, but so when it comes to let me tell you about a little bit more about this before I answer your question more. Once they established their state governments, right, they found their people who are willing to go into for so long, be seats of their government and go along with the process. As soon as the ICJ got the letter, right, everything changed. And this is what Nova Drali meant when things are going to change overnight. Because you need nobody's recognition, right, by law. You recognize yourself, in which we can get into in further classes how that's so. Because the United Nations say that numerous times. They don't recognize you. The actual people recognize themselves. But they must be notified, though. So what happens is that they're all for you wanting to work in harmony, just as you were before. They know that we're under stress. What happened when these two Moorish state governments, specifically ANPAC and ANPAG, sent their documents in? Everything changed. What do I mean by that? Well, for one or a few instances, run-ins with policy enforcers for whatever reason. Well, there were no problems. Exercising what some people call the nationality ID, but it's now a state ID because they have a state government. It is no longer a hassle as far as if you don't have a state ID, da 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 da, because you're a more state government, da 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 da, right? So everything that you're doing now, when you pledge, take your oath of allegiance, or when you become that Moorish national of your Moorish state government, so does your straw man. Okay, and everything between, because you are to take everything, every single thing that relates to you under that Moorish state government, right? So you pledge as the living being, and you got to bring that corporation over to the state government, so you can then utilize what's in that straw man. What's in that straw man? Well, they got a lot in that bank account, you see. But a person can't utilize that themselves. You have to be a part of a government in order to utilize that. So then we come into, not only do policy enforcers recognize you, but guess who else? Everybody that you got to deal with. Because if everybody on international law is realizing you, you may get some drawback as far as attitude, but nonetheless, I've never came across a story that, how before you came across stories like, oh, I had to go through this and that, nah, this way is the pinnacle way. It is the way that I assure you no Moors besides these other three Moor state governments have taken. And so when we're talking about friction and being worried and, things of that nature, when we moving in this fashion, we're talking about basically setting yourself up in a manner to say, hey, when your name is on a record and you had a job and you were part of a Moor state government, well, now we're talking about notifying the correct parties. All you got to do is notify. You don't have to you don't have to argue with nobody. Do not notify, just as many Moors would try to notify their job, try to correct their taxes or whatever. Oh yeah, I did my national. I'm trying to do my taxes like this. They would notify them in a certain fashion. Well, now we're notifying them in a fashion from the highest pinnacle, in which that they would have no choice from every crevice but to respect. Okay. Now again, this has its certain phases as to how we actually take part in these buildings that's on the land. You know, there's certain phases, but that's a part of that's what these classes are about. What's the we gonna go into what about the phases? So these taxes, right? We're gonna go into a couple areas about that. We're gonna spend a nice amount of time on that a little bit, and then we're gonna go into the next phase. And by a certain amount of phases, we're gonna go into okay, now we know how to go on a grand scheme because we went over this element, and this element, right? And it took our time with each one. So that's where because a lot of Moors now are fond of trying to do business as an organization, i.e., whatever organization they set up, or the Moor Science Temple of America. And that's fine and dandy to a certain degree. Once you know better, you got to do better, right? It's no longer time to just, I can't get this clear off my screen, but it's no longer time to just sit in a governments and just do business as an organization waiting for Babylon to fall. That's just, it's not going to just fall into your hands. Like it'd be like 1,000 organizations in one town full of Moors, and all the Moors expect the organization to America just fall in their hands. Like, and those 1,000 organizations in that one town. Think about all across Morocco. You know what I'm saying? You're talking about 1 billion if that's the case. So we got to take this into ways where it's not egotistical, to where one person can work as an organization and think it's gonna fall into their hands because they got all the big ideas. Like there's no reason to reinvent any type of wheel to go and try to figure out anything else. Every type of thought that we can utilize is already drawn out. You know what I'm saying? We just got to go back and read it, utilize it, and realize it where it got to be placed. You know what I'm saying? And realize where we're placed at in order to utilize the treaty. Right? So, because we ain't going to use every Moroccan treaty just because it's a Moroccan treaty. We just going to, we're going to work on degrees. Right? So, I hope I answered your question, when it comes to working in harmony, because that's the whole point of doing business as an organization was for, so you can work in peace as a Moor, at least proclaim your nationality. When it comes to statehood, so we're not stateless, right? That's another topic. We need a state, right? And our state just can't be state of mind. It's the actual government.
Yes. Islam. You answered. I'm sure you will address it in the future more detail.
Okay, yeah, Islam for sure. And again, I'm gonna make a certain video about that in particular. The doing business as an organization aspect and government. State government particularly. Because a lot of people say theocratic government. Well, you said government, right? Well, no. State government. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot of windows to close. You know what I'm saying? To clean and close. So and open. But so yeah, if anybody else got any more questions, we can definitely dabble into more, because I can tell you the way I'm feeling, I want to read more, but I'm gonna just stop there and let it breathe. You know what I'm saying? And let everybody kind of, it's a 2-hour video, so I really ain't trying to make it like OC long and have everybody stressed out just looking at the time like, oh good. But so the next class gonna be on the end of this, as well as we gonna merge into the France versus United States of America case. Because remember, all of which we just read was in 1913, right after the Treaty of Fez. The France versus United States of America case was in 1952. That's decades and decades later, right? So we're gonna talk about this case, and this case is gonna be them remembering or them speaking on everything that we went over today again, kind of, and even more, right? So again, we can use, and I'm kind of just talking at this point, because class is really over, but we can use international law cases when people say you're not in Morocco. Well, France, everybody know that France had control over Morocco, right? The Kingdom of Morocco now, right? But if that's the case, why was France during that same time saying United States of America is in Morocco? It's an international law. This ain't no book. This ain't no random author, right? So we can see now here twice in the first 2 pages, right? United States of America and Morocco, right? United States of America and Morocco. And remember, this is France, and they said United States and Morocco too. Okay. So, is there any more questions or anything anybody else want to build on? Any random statements? You know what I mean? And just to let everybody know, if it's anything personal that y'all want to build on or ask or speak on, just share. I do donation consultations for anything as little as $1. As long as you get Cash App, PayPal, or whatever, because outside of class, I don't, really try to talk to too many people, at least for free, unless it's like, you really helping me out or something like that, because that could be a lot of people to talk to sometimes, especially when I'm doing other things. So, you just give out your heart. Like, I really ain't tripping. If you're really on board about getting your state government, I'm definitely not tripping. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to want to talk to you, so, if there's no more questions, we can end this, and I'll post this on YouTube, hopefully.
Thank you, good brother, man. It was a good class. I don't have no questions personally. I feel like everything you explained and touched on was very clear. So with that being said, man, I yield the floor. And I say thank you for the knowledge, brother.
It's good fella. It's no problem, man. So anybody else? If it's I ain't gonna lie, that when it says deleted account, that messed me up. I'm like, man, who is this? But yeah, if it's nothing else to be said, I'll talk to y'all and see y'all next class, hopefully. And again, if y'all want to have anything outside of this class, y'all can just hit me up on social media of any sort, and holler at me then, or we exchange numbers or whatever then. Or even
Quick question. Is this open to the public? Can I send this to a friend?
Oh yeah, link. More the mirror, yeah.
Okay, bet.
Mm-hmm. And it's gonna be the same link every time. So, but I gotta be in first to let everybody else in. So, all right, Moors, I'll holler at y'all next class, inshallah. And I'll talk to y'all next time, all right?
It's long.
Peace to you. Deleted account.